Hello everybody, it's me, your good friend Sparky, and this is a video about childhood anxiety. I've basically been around video games my entire life. I grew up with an NES, a Master System, and an Intellivision, which were all more or less hand-me-downs from my uncle and my dad. But the video game system that I've been quoted as being my favorite, the one that shaped me, the one that made me into the gamer I am today, is the Nintendo 64. It will always be my favorite system, and nothing will ever change that. But in all actuality, when talking about video game systems that shaped me and sort of turned me into who I am, in the words of Master Yoda, there is another. And that other is the Game Boy. Game Boy. Yay! Yes, the original gray brick Game Boy was my first handheld video game system, and it's actually a rather important system to me. This is the same one I got something like 25 years ago when I was in second grade in elementary school. Boy, that was a while ago. The never-ending march of time continues to be absolutely terrifying. Before the Game Boy, I don't think I even really knew that handheld video gaming was a thing. I grew up around consoles, I just assumed that that was the world of video games, but lo and behold, this wonderful little box came into my life at a very important time. I'd say overall I had a pretty simple, normal childhood. When I was 7 or 8 years old, I had a family who loved me. I had an older sister who frequently picked on me, but I knew she meant well. I had friends that I frequently talked to and hung out with, and I had a teacher who I will always remember as being one of the most awesome teachers ever. It was a teacher and class that was such a tight-knit group. Not only did she teach us in second grade, she taught us in third grade as well. But one day something happened to small Sparky. Something to this day I really can't figure out what caused it. No matter how often I think back to this time of my life, I can't place a blame on anything that made this happen. But one day, school just became somewhere I didn't want to be. It was a bad place. I did not want to go to that building. I did not want to leave home or the side of my parents. It was to a point where it was literally me kicking and screaming, fighting my parents, not wanting to go to school. My dad literally one day had to pick me up and put me on the bus just to make sure I would go. Truthfully, there were changes in my life going on at that time. My mom had taken up a frequent babysitting job, and very often I would have to get on the bus not from my own home, but from the house that she babysit at. I went with her in the morning, and then I would go back there in the afternoon after school. I don't really think that had anything to do with it, but I guess anything is possible. I think that would be more of a question for a therapist or a child psychologist. So, yeah, you have a situation where a inconsolable 7 or 8 year old doesn't want to go to school to the point of literally fighting his parents and trying not to go to school. I don't think that was a fun situation for my mom or my dad. And when I think back to it and realize I don't really have an answer for why it happened, I feel pretty darn bad. So while this was all going on, my mom was talking about it to one of her friends from her days of doing dog shows, a wonderful person by the name of Montreux. Montreux ended up asking what's something that would make me happy, and of course the answer was video games. So the next question that was asked was, would he like a Game Boy? And so the next thing I know, I'm being told that this very Game Boy is being sent in the mail to me, along with a copy of Dr. Mario and Super Mario Land. Yes, you are looking at the same exact cartridges I received when I was 7 years old, my very first handheld video games. And of course they are both Mario related. I freaking loved Mario. After this guy showed up, my mom went as far as to ask my teacher if I could bring it to school with me, and she said yes, as long as I didn't play it during class. And I think I still ended up playing it during class a couple times. I mean, can you blame me? I was 7 years old and I had a brand new Game Boy. But having this little guy with me during the day, giving me even the briefest of distractions, helped take my mind off of where I was and what I was doing. And lo and behold, my anxiety over going to school started to dissipate. My anxiety in general, that's a bit of a different story, but again, that's more of a topic for a therapist. I honestly owe a lot to this little box and Montru, who sadly passed away a few years ago. I never really got the opportunity to thank them in person because it was someone that I didn't actually get to meet very often. Not to mention, I got to play a ton of awesome Game Boy games because of it. The very first game that was specifically bought for me for my Game Boy was Super Mario Land 2. And this game is incredible. I was so in awe of this game when my dad bought it for me that I forgot to put my seatbelt on for the entire car ride home. And in hindsight, I'm really glad my dad didn't get pulled over. But I think even more important than that was a different Game Boy game that I eventually played. Back when I did my Pikmin video series at the end of 2022, I had an episode where I talked about the concept of favorite video games, and how I really didn't know what mine was. I know what my favorite video game console is, I know what my favorite video game series is, but as for one specific video game, I really couldn't put a finger on what it was, what it would be. That is, until the following series I did after Pikmin, Breath of the Wild. I've of course always loved The Legend of Zelda since I started playing it, but it made me realize how much I did like Zelda. I've got lots of Zelda accessories for my systems. I've got lots of Zelda controllers. My Wii U is the Wind Waker limited edition system. And so compiling all those facts together, it made me think about my favorite Zelda game, which is my very first Zelda game for the Game Boy, Link's Awakening DX. And do you know what I realized after that? This is my favorite video game. I say that phrase, Link's Awakening DX is my favorite video game, and it just feels right. This is a game I can literally play at any time, play through it start to finish, without any breaks, and love it exactly the same every time I do it. And the only reasons that I ever got to play this game was A, my sister got Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64, and having a Zelda game of my own was awesome, and B, I was an anxiety-ridden 7-year-old that ended up getting a Game Boy from a friend of my mom. I got to play my favorite video game ever because of that point in my life and the person who gave me this. Montru, if you are seeing this from wherever you are in the afterlife, thank you so much. You don't know how much this little system means to me. And as sappy as it is, that's my story about my friend, the Game Boy. This little rectangle may be primitive nowadays, but the emotions and nostalgia attached to it will forever make it one of my favorite childhood items. And I suppose that's the end of story time for now. Thank you very much for watching. This is your good friend Sparky signing off. And I'll catch you later.